I'll be celebrating 20 years here in Canada this April. Looking back, it's been an adventure. I currently live and work here in Toronto. 20 years would mean I have spent most of my adult life in Canada. But I did grow up, got my education in the Philippines. Like many Canadians, I'm an immigrant. What I'd like to share today is my story on how I got to practice both these professions here in Canada. I came to Canada as a student. I studied optometry first, and after that I took up a pharmacy. And right after I graduated pharmacy, Zellers, which is a Canadian department store back then, came to the Philippines to find pharmacists who they can help to educate and get licensed and hope that they'll fill in their pharmacist needs for their different pharmacies in their retail stores. At that time, there were not too many pharmacists. There was a limited number of schools and graduates, and the pharmacy business was very lucrative. They needed help to fill up the positions that they had within Canada. The University of Toronto had a bridging program that they developed, which they trained international pharmacists on how to practice in Canada. In effect, this program helped prepare the international graduates for the exams also. So in essence, Zellers, in cooperation with a partner in the Philippines, assisted to get students their student permits to go to Canada, and they helped us enroll in the University of Toronto Bridging Program. Zellers also gave financial support for our living expense, rent, food, transportation, living allowances. We had to pay that back, of course, but we were so grateful. I am grateful for the opportunity that they gave to us. It's a long process to get licensed here in Canada. First, you need your credentials to be assessed. You submit your transcript of records, your school records. And they're gonna evaluate it to see if the courses, the subjects that you took from your country are equivalent to the Canadian school standard. Most countries are eligible, they qualify. Then you need to take an English proficiency exam. This is really to show if your communication, whether writing, listening, reading, and speaking, is in an academic level. Once my documents and transcripts were assessed, you will be eligible to write what's called an evaluating exam. This is one of the many exams that you would face in this journey. The evaluating exam is an exam that is only required for international graduates. I also had a separate evaluating exams when I went through the process for optometry. So Zellers had a program. We went to Vancouver for 10 days, 1 November, to write the evaluating exam. After writing that, we went back home and we waited for the results. When we find out if we passed, we enrolled to the University of Toronto Bridging. Then we applied for the student visa and flew back to Canada. I arrived in Canada one April evening. I had $500 on my wallet, hand carry, and 2 carton boxes of clothes, books, and stuff. I can still remember the lights in the buildings of Toronto as we were driving down the highway of 401. So we got to our apartment. It was in Scarborough, Kennedy Road and Eglinton. Scarborough is part of the Greater Toronto area on the east side. It's what I would consider a gateway city for immigrants. Majority of the immigrants who arrive in Canada, at least in Ontario, starts off in Scarborough. I think because the rent is cheap and most of the relatives live, so they usually stay with them in the beginning at least. So a lot of immigrants in Scarborough, but there are a lot of immigrants in Toronto in general. One thing that's amazing in Toronto is that you will not feel out of place because everyone is not from this place. Since everyone looks different, no one stands out. Anyways, our first night in Toronto, or Scarborough, There were 6 guys of us in a 3-bedroom apartment. Our first evening, we only had a single metal bed that you had to assemble and mattress. We had no tables, no plates, no nothing. The next day, we were walking along the road. We saw a sofa left on the side of the road. 2 hours later, the sofa was up in our apartment. It was heavy because we didn't realize it was a sofa bed and it's made of steel. It had a hole in the middle of the cushion and it really looked like it was used for at least 20 years already. So eventually we bought our own dining table, chairs, and a TV. And someone gave us some other stuff for the apartment. And one time we even picked up a carpet. Another one that was left on the side of the street. This one though looked like it was out of a crime scene. You could almost make out that faint image, the drawing that the police makes on the carpet where the victim died. I know, but again, this was our carpet. So I'm now attending the bridging program at the University of Toronto School of Pharmacy. It's a 6-month program. It was amazing. They taught us a lot about how to become and how to practice as a pharmacist. It was so intense. It is actually hard, but an amazing experience. Around the end of the bridging program, we did challenge the qualifying exams. The qualifying exams is the exams that all pharmacy graduates, Canadians and international graduates, will need to pass to be eligible to practice pharmacy. It's made of 2 days of written exams and 1 oral exam. It's very difficult, so difficult. In fact, failed my first try. 30 of us actually failed. This was frustrating for us, but also scary because, again, we were students at that time and we needed this exam. We needed to be licensed to be able to stay in Canada. There are frustrations in this journey and failures. So for anyone who is an immigrant listening, just expect failures, but don't be discouraged. So I went for a 4-month studentship in Sarnia. Sarnia is about 4 hours west of Toronto while we're waiting for the next schedule for the qualifying exams. And my preceptor was an old, small Indian pharmacist named Manesh. He was an amazing guy. Super nice, super humble. Imagine Yoda, but laughed. I enjoyed the time with him. I actually returned for my internship. Anyways, after my studentship, it was about 4 months, it was time to challenge the qualifying exam again. And this time I did pass. From my experience on both those exams, I actually developed a technique on how to pass this exam, which years after, I established a review center to help international pharmacy graduates pass the OSCEs, which is the oral part of the exam. I'm revisiting those courses that I developed, and I'd like to offer it to anyone who's interested in preparing for the Canadian pharmacy exams. So if you subscribe in my YouTube channel and click notification so that you won't miss on the video about that. Now, after passing my exams, I need about 4 months again of internship. As I mentioned before, I went back to Sarnia with Mahesh. And then after 4 months, I finally got my license. By this time, my wife was with me here in Canada already. I was assigned in Welland, which is near Niagara Falls. Became a manager there. But I requested to be closer to Toronto because I was attending a church. I was the musical director at that time. So they moved me to Guelph. While I was a pharmacy manager in Guelph, someone pirated me to work in a long-term care pharmacy in Toronto. A long-term care pharmacy is a pharmacy that takes care of the supplies and medications of nursing homes and retirement homes and assisted living. I worked there for about 3 years. It was at this time, one of my university classmates contacted me and he said he was going to Canada to study because he got accepted to go through the bridging program of optometry. This guy was top of our class in optometry, brilliant fellow. And this was the start of my journey to become licensed as an optometrist. But I think I have to continue this later on, so watch out for part 2.